Hello there, friends, and welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. You guys might have seen our other videos covering the various ship manufacturers in the Star Wars galaxy. That series mostly focused on the major manufacturers that were operating around the time of the Skywalker saga. That means from around the Clone Wars to the Galactic Civil War period. It's actually a pretty turbulent time in history. Before the Clone Wars started, there had been 1,000 years of peace, no large galactic scale conflicts. We suddenly saw a huge demand for new military starships emerge overnight. With the discovery of the Separatist droid army, this opened the door to a lot of new manufacturers to enter the industry. Most of these companies had some experience in manufacturing. Many of them were already somehow a part of the shipbuilding industry, and they were building on the technology of companies that had come before it. But because of that unprecedented 1,000 years of peace that preceded this period, companies had to basically reinvent the wheel, create doctrine and designs based off of pretty much nothing. The only thing they could reference were wars that had happened centuries and centuries earlier. These new upstarts would be competing with some very old starship companies, some which were as old as the Republic itself. So what we didn't cover in that original video were a group of shipbuilding companies known as the founding shipwrights. These were 4 different manufacturers which have been building ships ever since the first days of the Old Republic. And because of how galactic civilization developed in the Republic, these founding shipwrights were incredibly important to the early exploration and expansion in territory. You see, all of these early founding members of the Republic were former slaves of the Rakatan Infinite Empire. The Rakatans were a cruel and militaristic xeno species that naturally were aligned with the dark side of the Force. These aliens, using Force-powered technology, would conquer most of the known galaxy. They enslaved many species, humans, Duros, Twi'leks, and many others, and deposited them all across their empire to toil away. This is why today there are many planets in the galaxy that have multiple species that are considered indigenous to said planets. At the same time, you also see certain species like humanity call many planets their place of origin. The Rakatans inadvertently, through their slave trade, seeded many planets with diverse alien populations. They basically create the foundation on many planets in Star Wars that we know today. But one day the Rakatan Infinite Empire was infected by a mysterious plague, and it spread across the galaxy, leading to the Empire's very swift downfall. All that remained within a few generations were a few ruins. All of the Rakatans' technology stopped working, including their FTL speed travel and communications, and so you had these slave colonies that were in a disconnected empire. It's a really unique situation to be stripped of all of your technology, but to be free from your enslavers. And to know that there are other colonies, other worlds full of people that were out in the stars, but you had no way of reaching them anymore. This is why the founding shipwrights that would emerge during this period were far more than just companies that built transportation. These shipbuilders captured the dreams and imaginations of people who hope to once again live in a connected galaxy. These founding shipwrights weren't just business ventures that were about making money. There were more lofty and romantic goals here. Without these ships, there would never be a galactic civilization. Without these ships, there would be no republic. And so these founding shipwrights were initially viewed as something similar to NASA or SpaceX, companies that were serving the greater good of society that could potentially help preserve our future by making us a multi-planet species. At first, the founding shipwrights would focus on building generational ships that could sustain crews and their offspring for many centuries. There were also sleeper ships that used cryogenic chambers. And as you can see, worlds started getting settled in the core and also in the Tion cluster. At the same time, these freed slaves would try to reverse engineer the very advanced force-powered technology of the Rakatans. They would break down the components that made up these machines and try to replace them with their own engineered parts. And within a few centuries, either humans on Corellia or some Duros invented the first working hyperdrive that didn't require force energy to be powered. This rapidly increased the speed of exploration, expanded the size of Republic territory, and also started a golden age of shipbuilding. Rendeli was one of the first core planets that was colonized by sleeper ships, roughly around 27,500 BBY. By 25,000 BBY, Rendeli had become a major military stronghold that had many military bases and industrial projects on its surface. Rendeli's star drive would soon be founded and spawn a huge collection of different subsidiaries that focused on various parts of defense manufacturing and shipbuilding. Rendelli would be best known for their Hammerhead-class cruiser and Praetorian-class frigate line. These two capital ships would serve the Republic and its various planetary defense force fleets for several thousands of years. The Hammerhead cruiser is actually considered the single longest-serving design in galactic history, and would see action from the Mandalorian Civil War all the way until the New Sith War. This would make Rendelli's Star Drive the preeminent shipbuilder in the galaxy for quite some time. Now, when the Ruusan Reformation demilitarized the federal military, Rendelli's Star Drive would lose a substantial portion of their business. They managed to still maintain some contracts with the Republic's judicial forces that had purchased several smaller shipyards spread across the Mid and Outer Rim, and started focusing on supplying more commercial ships and ships for planetary defense forces. At the time, Quad Drive Yards had burst onto the scenes with its massive capacity with that planetary shipyard. They were pouring trillions of credits into R&D for new massive battleships designs, and were attempting to lure rich worlds into upgrading their small fleets of planetary defense force snub fighters for something far more substantial. Now, Rendelli's Star Drive, taking a look at the state of the galaxy, which was quite peaceful, believed that these designs are overkill. They instead would unveil their Dreadnought-heavy cruiser as a competitor, a very robust but modest-sized capital ship that was designed to fit well into the post-Ruusan Reformation security sector. The Republic purchased a large fleet of these dreadnoughts and called it the Katana Fleet. This fleet featured a revolutionary computer system that slaved all of the controls of the ships together, a technological version of a forced battlefield meditation, if you will. This allowed for a much smaller crew to operate these vessels. However, on its maiden voyage, the Katana Fleet was afflicted with the deadly hive virus, and in a last brave act, the members of the fleet that had not succumbed yet to the virus jumped the entire fleet into an unknown hyperspace coordinate to prevent the spread of the disease. This was a huge disaster for an otherwise pretty capable starship. And then, after that happened, the Clone Wars started, and Rendelli once again found themselves on the back foot. That's because Quad Drive Yards and their subsidiaries had secured a series of massive secret contracts with Palpatine to build the future Grand Army of the Republic Navy. To make matters worse, several of the smaller subsidiaries bought by Rendelli that were located in the Outer Rim had now defected to the Confederacy. This created more internal conflicts for the company. Rendelli tried its best to secure a large contract during the Clone Wars and ultimately agreed to work on the Victor Initiative project. They managed to poach KDY's lead ship designer, Wellix Blissix, for the job, but the launch of the Victory-class Star Destroyer was marred with further design and manufacturing problems, and so by the time the Empire rose to power, Rendelli had already fallen out of favor with the Imperial Navy, and they were no longer considered one of the top 3 shipbuilders in the galaxy. There's technically no firsts amongst the founding shipwrights. They're all equal in their own way. But Corellian Engineering Corporation has always been one of the most important and famous starship companies in the galaxy. For one, no other starship manufacturer has maintained such dominance in sales numbers for such an extended period of time. There's really no period of Republic history where you don't see this company's ships. Corellia, as a planet, is also heavily associated with exploration and finding new planets, systems, and hyperspace routes. There's also a planet that bred smugglers, bandits, and pirates as well. The point being, at least half of the people born on Corellia end up leaving Corellia, eventually, usually on a CEC product. Something that looks clunky and asymmetrical, but is full of all sorts of surprises and gadgets. There are 2 things about Corellian Engineering Corporation's business practices that really stand out, and I think it really helps the company's longevity. One, they mainly sell to the civilian and commercial markets. As we mentioned, CEC is famous for their highly modular freighters. They do have some smaller capital ships, corvettes, frigates that they sell to government forces here and there, but by far their commercial and civilian segments are their moneymakers. CEC also tends to align with the Republic in most major conflicts. Either their products are independently bought and used to support the Republic in its many wars against the Sith, or through contracts that are given out by the Republic or Republic-aligned worlds to CEC directly. This might be due to the fact that the Sith Empire during the Galactic War invaded Corellia, placing the company's headquarters on the front lines of a pretty chaotic galaxy-wide conflict. CEC would suffer greatly during the Old Republic conflicts, but the Corellian shipwright did better than most of the other companies that were stationed on the planet. Eventually, CEC, being the largest company on Corellia with the deepest pockets, would absorb most of its competitors, and with the fall of the Corellian monarchy in 312 BBY, the planet of Corellia would become a corporatocracy with CEC's directors being in positions of great power. Although by this point, centuries of neglect of Corellia's environment had turned the planet into a wasteland that no one wanted to live on anyway. If Corellia is known for exploring the galaxy, then Alderaan is known for exploration of culture and the humanities. But at least in antiquity, Alderaan was quite a different place. It was just as beautiful, but a little more rugged. Established well before 20,000 BBY, Alderaan Royal Engineers was one of the most important founding shipbuilders in the early Republic. They were known for building several lines of capital ships and starfighters. They also had several civilian products like luxury liners and luxury yachts, and specialty constructions like space stations, including their SLS-class space station. Yes, I understand. It looks like a Death Star, but it's actually a construct designed to fit around a moon. What some people forget is Alderaan wasn't always a pacifist state. During the Great Galactic War, a massive Sith invasion of the planet led to the Alderaanian leadership adopting a pretty hardline militarist stance. This in turn would change the culture of Alderaan Royal Engineers into a more military and security-focused company. Although by the late Republic period, with the rise of new, extremely efficient or large-scale shipbuilders like Shipyards and Senior Fleet Systems, Alderaan Royal Engineers saw their sales fall tremendously. They lacked the niche capabilities that CEC had and were struggling to attract new customers. Before the company was destroyed, Alderaan Royal Engineer was taking part in the rearmament of Alderaan as they prepared to join the Rebel Alliance in the Galactic Civil War. Core Galaxy Systems was founded sometime before 20,000 BBY, and it was a massive company with many different subsidiaries that focused on specific ship products. For instance, the core company focused on delivering large capital ships like the CGS Dreadnought. This was, at the time, one of the larger and more fearsome ships in the galaxy at 900 meters in length. It was primarily designed to assault planetary defenses and defense fleets, break through those cordons, and then launch massive dropships which could deposit infantry to the ground. The company also had a subdivision that focused on fighters. One of their products that they delivered was the Dava type starfighter. The name in Mandoa means execution or carrying out. Talk about a company knowing their target market. This fighter became incredibly important amongst Mandalorians and would serve in many of the Crusader fleets as capital ship protection. The Davab was a pretty unique design at the time. It was feature-packed and difficult to fly thanks to the V-wing-like gyroscopic body. But that's exactly what the Mandalorians like. If you take a look at more modern renditions of their ships like the Cormac or the Fang fighter. But perhaps the most important part of the Core Galaxy Systems' vast portfolio was the simple and utilitarian Dynamic class freighter. It was made famous by the Ebon Hawk, a heavily modified version of the Dynamic class which played a huge role in the Jedi Civil War and the Sith Civil War. The Dynamic class freighter would become incredibly famous because of the exploits of just this one ship. But at its core, it was a relatively robust vessel with plenty of room and options for modification, which made it a consumer favorite. Now, at the time, Core Galaxy Systems was competing against two Corellian companies, Corellian Engineering Corporation and also Corellian Star Drive, which was kind of like an upstart newer manufacturer. It was completely normal and legitimate for companies like Core Galaxy Systems to hire teams of spies, saboteurs, and mercenaries to gather intel and industrial secrets from rival competitors. Injuries and murders of, opposite executive board members were not unheard of. I mean, how do you think Newt Gunray and the Neimoidians took over the Trade Federation? It used to have a multi-species governing board, until they all got assassinated. Well, let's just say the entire senior design team for Corellian Star Drive ended up perishing in a tragic shuttle crash. No one knows what happens. It doesn't really matter if Core Galaxy Systems had anything to do with it or not, because by then, Shipyards had already put itself in a position to initiate a hostile takeover of Core Galaxy Systems. Corellian Engineering Corporation, on the other hand, took a real liking to the Dynamic class light freighter's design philosophy and would launch their own equivalent civilian freighter that would heavily borrow from the Dynamic class. It would end up being widely successful and spawn other product lines, which would eventually lead to the YT-1300 freighter, which is what the Millennium Falcon was. But other than that, Core Galaxy Systems would cease to exist by the time of the Galactic Civil War. So there you have it, guys. Those are the four founding shipwrights of the galaxy, incredibly important companies that basically started FTL travel. Without them, Star Wars Galaxy would be a lot smaller. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. And as usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, the democracy. I'll see you next time.